Monday, everybody, and welcome back to the Couchside Judges. I'm Scott Fontana. Follow me on Twitter at Scott_Fontana.
And I'm Dan Urban. Follow me at the Dan Urban. Follow the podcast at Couchside Judges. And subscribe to us wherever you listen.
And if you like this show, you gotta give us a 5-star review. I've been begging for it. We don't have enough of them. Come on, get on it.
And as always, we talk judging in MMA. So make sure you read the scoring criteria. Best way to find it is heading to Google and typing in ABC MMA scoring criteria. Should be the first link that pops up.
Yeah, that's you'll note that it's a little different than the way we usually reference how to find the ABC scoring criteria because, well, Dan finally realized that there's not an easy way to achieve that mission by going to the ABC website.
It is. If you go to the abcboxing.com website, it's difficult to find the actual scoring criteria. And you need to, if you just Google it, it's the first result that comes up.
That's always what I do. And that really is how the way I did it. I always just Googled it.
So if you've been looking for it and calling us fools because I've been telling you to go to ABC Boxing and get it, and I apologize.
To be fair, if they've been calling us fools, you know, they know how to reach us.
That's true, too.
It's on them. You know what? If you've been doing it wrong, shame on you. It's on you.
It's probably a big joke. Like, oh, look at this idiot. He doesn't even know how to find it.
What a dummy.
This is the hardest way to find it, yeah. I'm not going to correct him.
To be fair, it should be easier to find.
Yeah, it should be.
It should be findable, period.
Yes.
And
at least
not.
it is. Well, it is through Google.
Yeah, but that's not the point.
Yeah.
And also, and I think we've pointed this out before, it is also a link to the 2016 approved version of the criteria, which largely is intact, but there have been small changes over time.
I will add that the one that I'm actually looking at, the file name is 2017. So
it is, but it says it was approved in, I believe, August 2016.
Yeah, approved August 2nd, 2016.
Yep, that sounds right.
Yeah.
So just, it didn't go into full effect until 2017.
Okay.
Having said that, I've heard that it was, maybe like soft launched basically the moment it was approved, and even to some degree was being utilized before that.
Yeah, possibly this is buried because they got that new language that's supposed to come out, right? New version.
But they've changed it since then. Like I think it changed. Like it was. I want to say it was like 2019. It was somewhere in the time range where they had taken out which we're going to talk about in a little bit. Some minor changes to the 10-7.
Okay.
But speaking of 10-7, that is actually our theme for this episode because we still do not have live fights that we're going to go over. There was live MMA this past weekend, not a whole lot of it. There was an LFA card.
Yes.
You said you watched that.
I
right?
watched.
I didn't go watch too much.
I watched one of the fights. Poor kid had a tap because his rib got popped.
I did see he was in agony.
Yeah, that was like, wow, that hurts a lot. I bet.
Well, a rib injury is pretty tough.
Yeah, he's like, it hurts to breathe.
Well, I imagine it was probably pushing in on his lung.
I was like, this kid is miserable right now.
Yeah, I would not want to be him.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think there was only like 4 rounds scored in that whole card anyway. When I was looking at it, none of them were decision.
I caught the main event too. How it ended.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, I think it was a TKO.
Okay, but yeah, so we're not going to be going over LFA. We don't have the scorecards. LFA does not put theirs out, and Arizona has not posted them. I don't expect they will. Maybe I'll reach out and see if they would be happy to share. We'll see. But
Ed Soares won't give them to you?
I guess I didn't reach directly out to Ed Soares, but I reached out to a media liaison for LFA. Okay. And I asked, hey, do you guys share the scorecards? And he said, we do not. And I said, okay. I got the sense it was like we do not and we're not going to.
Okay.
Just don't bother. So I was like, all right, whatever. But nonetheless, that's not our focus anyway. Our focus is on 10-7s. And before we get into that directly, all I want to say is it has been just an awful week in the mixed martial arts world. Starting off with the video link or the video showing Dana White slapping his wife several times. Terrible look. No repercussions apparently. We got slap fighting pushed back a week. Unfortunate losses and people doing awful things in terms of Phil Baroni has now been arrested in Mexico for allegedly murdering his girlfriend brutally. So the loss of just a way too soon loss in mixed martial arts from the Lee family. Victoria Lee, the youngest sister of Angela Lee and Christian Lee, 18 years old. Just terrible, terrible things happening in mixed martial arts right now. I have plenty of thoughts on those on social media. We'll isolate those to there, and we'll focus more on the rounds today, Dan.
Yeah, bad start to 2023.
Bad start, horrible start. You would think it can only go up from here, but God knows. Nonetheless, we're actually going to be diving way back into the past for a lot of this. I mean, I say way back. We're talking about last several years.
The one fight that we're going to talk about, I didn't realize it was only in 2019. I thought it was longer ago than that.
Okay,
but also time seems to be going further and further away, and it feels so far back, and it's really not that back.
You know what's funny is every second that passes, time does get further away.
Yeah,
the past keeps moving backward that way.
Okay.
We'll do theoretical physics and all whatever
Okay.
stuff later.
Neil deGrasse Tyson will be joining us later.
You think he's a
for
fight
that.
fan?
I think, yeah.
I doubt it.
Not that he's a fan, but I think he probably has some interesting takes on it, like physics-wise.
You know, did you see, by the way,
trauma type stuff?
Did you see that on Friday night there was actual other fights on too, Dan? If you turned on C-SPAN, there was some Friday night fights was going on.
Yeah, I didn't. I saw some some clips of it, like goofy clips.
Yeah, it was
But whatever.
bunch of old
This is
crazy people.
It's like if you want people to, I mean, just start fighting in Congress. Like Congress fights every Friday.
Or at least every 2 years on January 6th. There should just be stupid things happening in that building. Anyway, we are not focused on that. We are focused on 10-7 rounds.
The big day for 10-7s is today.
And we thought it was time. It's been, 3 years now we've been doing this show. Almost exactly 3 years that we've been doing this show. We haven't had a themed-ish episode on 10-7s. I think we're due.
There's some clothes on that rack that haven't been removed in those 3 years from the hook that the hanger that they're currently on.
Yeah, Dan is gesturing over to, because you guys can't see. We when we record in the Couchside Judge's studio, we're recording next to some of Dan's wardrobe that just sits on an open rack. And it's I don't think you've moved any of these clothes. I think they've all sat in the same place. You don't wear that Broncos jersey. You don't wear that Ken Griffey.
Ken Griffey Jr. jersey is one I would like to wear. I just haven't.
Okay, then do it.
That's a TO jersey on the Bengals.
Oh, I thought it was a Broncos jersey.
No, that's a
okay.
TO jersey.
Why would you buy a TO jersey?
Because I thought the Bengals had cool colors, and I like TO.
All right, look. One of us has ADHD, and it's not you. So let's focus, all right?
Yeah.
It takes a lot of effort, sir. Anyway, we are here for 10-7s, and because it's time, and I think we also have to kind of update people on the fact that we were at the ABC training course over last summer. We both passed.
Yes.
Blessedly.
We did.
Through hard work, paying attention, and it was a good time. But we learned in the process how judges are taught to evaluate 10-7 rounds. We'll talk about that in a moment, but first, why don't you, Dan, read the criteria, the particular section, and again, we're working off of the old document, the one that was approved in 2016 and enacted 2017. Why don't you just read that 10-7 section, which is not very long.
Yeah, it's 8 lines. 10-7 round, it starts with a quote. A 10-7 round in MMA is when a fighter completely overwhelms their opponent in effective striking and or grappling, and stoppage is warranted. A 10-7 round in MMA is a score that judges will rarely give. It takes both overwhelming dominance of a round, but also significant impact that at times cause the judge to consider that the fight could be stopped. Judges shall look for multiple impactful blows or knockdowns that diminish the fighter and or grappling maneuvers that place the fighter in dominant situations with impact being inflicted that visibly diminishes the fighter's ability to compete. That's it.
That is it. And that's more or less, that's similarly in line with what we were more or less taught with the ABC class. But one thing that was particularly noted in the class was that they're looking for overwhelming damage, overwhelming dominance, overwhelming duration, right?
Yes, they want all 3Ds and all the overwhelming variety.
They're all 3 ODs. And
Yeah.
We're not talking about the drug variety.
Yeah, just overly dominant, overly damaging, overly during.
Overly durationing.
Yeah.
Not a word, sir.
Yeah,
It was a good try. It was a good try.
Well, I got the first two, and I said, "Oh, what do I go with this one?"
Yeah, backed into a corner there. So the way that we're going to look at these rounds today is through that lens. It's we're looking for overwhelming of all 3. That's in our interpretation of what that means. That may mean something different to another judge. It may even be flawed because, again, we're not actual judges, right? And who really knows what a 10-7 round is when you see it? Because there are just so few of these freaking things. There's not a whole lot to. We have 5 in all from the UFC the last 6 years that we know about. And I'm working hard to try and dig up more information on rounds that maybe we just aren't aware of and that kind of thing. But at this point, there are 5 known rounds, and that is it. I've not heard that there are other ones out there. I would guess in the last 6 years that in the UFC there are not. We already know about all 5. That's my guess. Maybe I'm wrong. I do know of a Cage Warriors round that received 10-7. We're not going to get into that one, though. We're kind of isolating specifically to UFC because people will probably be a little more familiar with those rounds, I think, is the best way to do it here. But what we also did was we pulled from unanimous 10-8 rounds. So rounds that all 3 judges sat there and said, yeah, that's a 10-8 for sure. Because we're thinking, okay, at the very least, those are probably the most lopsided rounds outside of a 10-7 potential, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I did some digging, looked up, maybe some statistics and things like that to kind of help guide me and focus on what rounds I should try to watch. Because I think I got like a pool of like 130 rounds to look at with these unanimous 10-8s over the last 6 years.
There's quite a bit in there.
There's way too many for us to realistically watch.
Well, you tried your hardest.
I mean, I did. I watched I watched 41 of these rounds. Well, that's not true. I watched 41 rounds counting the 5-10-7. I watched 41 rounds. You ended up watching close to 20, I think. You didn't quite get as many as me.
I did all the ones you highlighted.
Yes.
Which
we're going to be talking about today.
I'm going to say this. I didn't know that you actually highlighted these. I just thought you bolded them. So I just went to ones that were bolded.
Well, I sort of bolded the ones that I was like, I thought were worth watching.
Okay.
For me.
That's where I started.
Yeah, no, that's fine. You didn't do anything wrong in that sense, but ultimately, yeah, the ones that were highlighted were the ones that I'd kind of already decided for us that, hey, we should probably look at these. And I've left it open to you to add if you happen to see any, but I don't believe you actually saw anything that kind of we were like, oh, this one might be worth adding to. I think we were pretty much working off of a good list. We got some helpful tips from some judges who, of course, have seen so many of these rounds.
Yeah. Kind
of pointed us in the direction of a couple that, hey, they might be at least worth revisiting for this show, whether we had already watched them or not. So what we ended up with was a list of 5-10-7 rounds, of course, ones that actually received a 10-7 score. Now, mind you, none of these have received more than 10-7 on the round anyway.
I got a question.
Yeah, what's up?
I know you've probably told me this before. I've probably asked you. There's no round unanimous 10-7.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
If there is, it probably predates this. I would say it definitely predates this, and I wouldn't know what that would be.
Okay.
So when we say in the language these are rarely given, I mean that's the understatement of the year.
Mm-hmm.
These are once in every couple years, one person might actually try to do it. That's how insanely high the bar is. And then granted, because we're working off of the interpretation of overwhelming damage, overwhelming dominance, overwhelming duration, that bar is insanely high. So we're trying to keep the high bar when we look these over too. But yeah, so we have 5 that did receive a 10-7 score from one judge. And then we have, I believe the number ended up being 8 unanimous 10-8 rounds that we said, hey, why don't we give these a second look and see if they have it. 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm counting right now. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 actually. We have 11 extra rounds.
Yeah.
That's a lot for us, but we're not going to be going as deep into
It's not a typical contested round.
This is not contested rounds. This is a little it'll probably still be a meaty episode, and hopefully you're up for that. I hope you guys enjoy this one, because we're not. It's not like we can do more of these. It's not going to
settle in.
You're going to have to wait another 10-15 years to get enough 10-7 rounds to look at. So
go around the block a few more times.
But yeah, so we got a long one here. I think we've established kind of what we're doing here, and why don't we get into it? And I believe what we ought to do. Hope you agree. We should start with the ones that actually got the 10-7.
Yeah, let's hit the 10-7.
We're gonna hit them in not alphabetical order, chronological order of when they were given. I'll tell you the event, I'll tell you the date, and I'll tell you where, just so you kind of have a rough idea here, right? And the first one that we know of that was given after the changes in criteria was at UFC 215. September 9, 2017 in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Ricky Glenn got the unanimous decision win over Gavin Tucker. Scores of 30-25, 30-24, and then all of the other way, 29-27.
That's wild.
We're not getting into contested here, so we're not going there. But let's focus in on this third round where all the judges thought it was at least a 10-8, but one judge gave a 10-7. Why don't we just kind of give a briefer overview than we usually do for what happened in this round?
Yeah, I mean, what an absolute beatdown. The first minute, Glenn
for Ricky Glenn, yeah.
Yeah, Ricky Glenn, the first minute, he's just bullying Gavin Tucker on the feet, clinching, landing knees to the body and head, good elbows to the head, and then Tucker basically pulls side control.
Good move.
Kind of just flops to his back. I don't know if it was a failed lateral drop or whatever. I don't know. But he ends up in side control and just gets beat up for the rest of the round. Here and there, he'd entangle the legs, like, hey, I'm going to lock your leg up. But he just got pummeled. It was overwhelming damage.
And Glenn is postured, too. I mean, he's on the ground, and he's kind of just standing up where Tucker's just down.
Yeah, so he was punching him in the face.
So it's not even just like he's sitting there in guard. He's like way up there. He can get the hips way into it if he wants.
He was beating the crap out of him.
Mm-hmm.
Overwhelming damage, dominance, and duration. The entire round, he beat him up. Dug to the body and head. Final 15 seconds, Tucker stands up, and he can barely walk. He's just wobbling all over the place, and then eats a front kick to the face 2 seconds before the buzzer goes off. I think 10-7 for sure. This is 10-7 definitely warranted here.
I felt like this was a 10-7. I felt like this among all the fights rounds that I ended up watching. This was one of the most dominant. This is one of the most dominant rounds that I think has ever happened in the UFC. Actually made it to the horn. Because obviously we have some that stopped a little early, right? That's the thing. I think a lot of people sometimes when they think back to dominant fights, they think of fights where, oh my God, somebody was just destroying them. But they kind of forget that, there was the finish in that round,
Yeah.
And so no one scored it. Here we actually get to score it. So that's why we know. This was heavy on the overwhelming dominance, damage, and duration. Overwhelming in all three facets here. I think it's probably the most. It really might be the most no-brainer 10-7 that we're going to talk about here.
It's really.
I think it really might be
really strong.
Yeah.
So.
I agree with you. I have the 10-7. So do you. And so did Sal D'Amato. He is the one who gave this round a 10-7 for Glenn. Judges Sean Gerke, and I hope I'm saying that right, and Dave Hagen. They had this one as an 8. I don't remember if I said this before. I'm going to say it now. I cannot criticize an official for not giving the 7 because who would recognize it if they ever saw it?
At this point, it's unheard of.
Yeah, I mean, it's not exactly unheard of. I think there have been 10-7 scores before. It just was very hyper rare. Just like
it still is hyper rare. Yeah,
that's true. But it's not quite unprecedented. It was pretty darn close. So yeah, this is not a critique on judges Gerke and Hagen for not giving the 7, but they were the ones who didn't. And I do think this is, if we had established at the time this is a 7, use as a benchmark. Remember this. I think that would have been good.
Well, here's the thing: if you set this as the benchmark for a 7,
or maybe not the only benchmark, but let's say this is a solid one, real good.
This is a strong 10-7.
Yeah,
say
I think
because
so.
You can't set the bar at this because that would be crazy hard to surpass without killing the guy. So
that's true. Although there's one round today where we're gonna talk about it. It almost looked like somebody was trying to allow that to happen.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, we'll get to that later.
That's true.
But yeah, so I think this is a 7, man. I feel good about it.
Yes,
really good.
Yeah, so do I.
Yeah. Still can't believe there was a 29-27 here when it's 30-25 and 30-20. I don't know what that is. Maybe we'll have to look at that round one day or that fight. That is wild. If that happened today, I mean the outcry of judging, judging's awful. It's worse than ever. Anyway, moving on now though to our next time that we saw it, and it really wasn't that much later. It was about a month and a half later we got another one.
Mm-hmm.
So it almost became a regular occurrence here. It was at UFC Fight Night, Cerrone versus Till. So a lot has changed. These were names that you'd headline a fight night with on October 21, 2017 in Gdansk, Poland. This fight between Josh Emmett and Felipe Arantes. This also went the distance, 30-26 twice and a 30-25. So the split here is really about this round one we're going to talk about, that Emmett just goes bonkers. What's happening?
Yeah, Emmett's throwing heavy punches, and when he lands, Arantes is kind of just falling to the floor. It's
almost every time he gets hit, he's just falling.
It's weird because they don't really look like knockdowns, but he's getting knocked down.
Oh, he's absolutely getting knocked, and some of them really are.
I think he sent him to the mat 4 times.
Yeah.
But only 2 seem to be solid. Like the
later two.
other two sort of like he's kind of maybe playing possum. Just
They were talking about that. Yeah.
He wants to be on the ground. Hopefully, this is the easiest way for him to get it there. Pretend you're hurt and flop around. I don't know. But
you imagine his strategy. He goes out there and tells Emmett, "I want you to hit me as hard as you can."
Well, yeah, Emmett obliged. Yeah, no issues there. But later in the round, Emmett is hitting him with big shots, and definitely the second half of knockdowns, the final 2-1, were strong.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're definitely at a 10-8.
No question.
I don't really have any of the D's in the overwhelming variety, not really strongly overwhelming. If there's, can you be a double adjective?
You can describe things with as many adjectives as you want, like the quick brown fox. There's two there.
Like there's that towards the end of the round, Emmett's cracking him in the face, and he doesn't go down from the one, and it's like, wow, that hurt. I know that hurt.
Yeah. I can I say this though? I actually think there is overwhelming dominance here. I think there's just a total outclassing in the striking department here because
I would agree that
he is. I mean, the fact that he's getting knocked down this many times, I think, shows just how out of it he was. He was Felipe Arantes isn't doing anything to threaten in the striking department. He is thoroughly outclassed. And I would say that did happen for the duration of the round too, because he is landing these like almost consistently, these knockdowns. It's pretty wild. He doesn't land a lot of punches. It's kind of a low output, but every time he does, they're hyper effective in that sense. But yeah, damage is where I question it. Like, how badly hurt is he every time? Is he a diminished fighter? I don't know.
I would say
like a heavily diminished fighter. He's probably diminished, but
heavily no. I don't think so.
So I think that the problem for me is that there's just not quite the damage, which feels like the most important one. It always seems to be damage. It should be, especially by modern standards, right?
Mm-hmm.
If it's not like, oh man, he's looking like maybe it ought to be. Not that you want to have the bar be that the referee should step in, even though language has said that in the past. It's not. I believe that language has been removed.
It has. I just read it.
Yeah, it has been removed. So,
no, it hasn't been removed.
No,
from the one I just
read. The old one. Since then, I believe it has been removed. Is what I'm saying.
But that hasn't been published.
No, I mean, we don't have access to it. It is somewhere. Somebody has it.
Oh yeah, but I'm just saying.
But yes, you're right. It's not anywhere that people can actually find. You're not wrong. But yeah, I think the damage is really just in the 10-8, like solid 10-8 category, because as much as he's getting knocked down, he doesn't seem like you're not worried about him, in any way.
Yeah, this is a round where I'd be worried if you scored it at 10-9. Like,
well,
really?
Sure.
That would just be insane. So
it feels like a very solid, strong 10-8, but not quite the 7 level to me. You agree?
Yeah, I agree.
And so we agreed with the majority here being Ben Cartledge. And I'm going to say this wrong because I'm terrible with Polish names, but Maciej Modaluski. I'm so bad with Polish names, dude. My brother-in-law's girlfriend is Polish. I'm going to start asking her how to say some of these.
I think the name is Maciej.
All right. We'll go with
Maciej Modaluski.
Yeah. So those two, we agreed with them. Ben Cartledge, we've got that one down. We know how to say that one.
I got that one.
We learned that one. Paul Sutherland was the one who gave this. Yeah, that's not too hard either. He gave the 10-7 to Emmett. And again, I'm not necessarily sitting here saying, oh, he shouldn't have given it. It's just that I think based on our understanding of what they're looking for, this may not have been it.
I'm fine with it though.
Yeah, that's the thing. I'm okay with it, but I also just based on what we learned, it doesn't seem like the way I would pull it.
Okay.
Fair. Yeah. I'm not criticizing any officials here for these at all. That's not what we're doing. The next one though, we got to move on to another that happened. I guess technically Moscow, Russia is in Europe, right? UFC Fight Night, Hunt versus Olenek, September 15, 2018. So we're moving a year ahead, and Khalid Murtasaliev got the win over CB Dalloway. After round 2, it was a TKO referee stoppage. Round 2, like
it's weird in itself.
This is the one. Yeah. I mean, we can get into that too. We'll get into that. Talk about round 2. What's happening here? Because this is a weird one.
Really
weird round.
Weird round. Very competitive for like 3.5 minutes of the round. Murtasaliev lands a nice spin kick to the body. They have a bunch of back and forth grappling exchanges, with, CB being, getting the advantage, and Murtasaliev countering, ended up in mount, sweeps, and then Dalloway locks in an anaconda, and it looks pretty tight. But, Murtazaliev, yeah, he
I believe. He's a Bellator
he-
now, I think.
okay. He escapes, gets to mount, lands some strikes. It's really just a 10-9 until about 50 seconds left in the round.
Yep.
From here, he just starts teeing off on Dalloway, and Dalloway is just exhausted, covering his head, eating shots, a bunch of heavy ones. It's a weird round. I understand a 7, but I just don't think I have the overwhelming duration. I think for sure we have overwhelming damage. Is there overwhelming dominance?
I don't even know that there's
don't
overwhelming
know.
dominance is the weird thing.
Yeah, I don't know if we have overwhelming dominance.
Because there's a point in this round where you could almost start toying with the idea of it being 8 or 9 for Dalloway. Toying with it. Yeah. I'm not saying it gets there, but we're starting to think about it because he's getting to that point where he's got the anaconda.
That anaconda looked good.
That's what I'm saying, man. Like if you're watching it live and you don't know what's happening later, you're starting to head in that direction rather than the other way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like that final 50 seconds is the wheels come off the entire round.
Right. Well, I mean,
so.
I think it still flips very quickly over to Murtazaliev once he gets into mount, and basically from minute 3 through with 3 minutes to go through like 1 minute to go, that like middle period there, he definitely takes the round back into his control. Like, and yeah, it's probably more like a 9 for him just because there was like the other way. But yeah, man, it just craters for Dalloway in this final minute. He is just getting destroyed. And for 20 seconds, it really looks like Herb Dean ought to stop this.
So I agree with that for the final 10 seconds. Because the first 20 seconds, it's like, oh, wow, he's actually kind of blocking these shots, even though I'm sure that his bell's still getting rung.
But is this intelligent defense?
Oh, no, not at all.
No.
Not at all.
Then you can stop
Not at all. It's the final 10 seconds where it's like CB's gas tank is completely depleted.
Right.
He's just laying there waiting for the bell to ring or Herb Dean to mercifully stop it.
Yeah. And he was not okay when the bell ended. And granted, the judges cannot sit there, or they're not supposed to do that, where they sit there and observe for a while. Hey, how's this guy doing?
Yeah.
The round ends. You're kind of supposed to write your score down, right? And I don't think any of the judges did that here. I think these are good judges. I wouldn't expect that. But the point being that people need to understand, if they're sitting at home, that's the process, right?
Yeah.
And if you're not familiar, that is the process. You evaluate even just that final minute to literally the horn. It skyrockets from a 9 to at least a borderline 7 that I think we're talking about here, right? And this might be, I don't even know if the damage was higher in any round we're going to talk about today than in this round. This might be the most overwhelming damage of any round that we're going to talk about. Debatable? Okay.
Debatable.
You can tell me why later.
Yeah.
But I would put this one forward, at least for now. You can push back if we get to another one. But the point being, I think I can see this. The D for damage obviously is the strongest one.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's missing those other two, based on the way we were taught, I don't think I would give the 8. And I think that's a functional problem of the criteria. If that is what it would be.
Yeah,
right?
I have some thoughts.
If
on
that's
that.
what it would be.
Yeah, I have.
Yeah,
there.
then I feel like what it should be is just allow for something like that to be a clear 10-7.
Yeah,
that's what it should be, and it should be much easier to figure that out. So yeah, the judge who, by the way, scored the 10-7 was Ben Cartledge, who, I mean, let's face it, we have a lot of respect for Judge Cartledge here. Disagreeing with him once again, it is in no way an indictment. It's just the way we have figured out to interpret this kind of thing.
The way we've been taught and the way we want things to be are different.
Very different.
So
Very different things.
We're happy to see the 10-7.
So we ended up, again, we were on the 8 side here, siding with judges David Leatherby and Maria Makhmutova. So that, I think, probably puts a bookend here on this round, right? I don't think I have any more to add, right? We've got plenty more rounds to get to here. So let's move on to our 4th of 5 actual 10-7s at UFC 231. We're back at the pay-per-view section here, but a little more than a year later. December 8th, 2018 in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Max Blessed Holloway put on a clinic on Brian Ortega, especially in round 4, after which the doctor stopped it. So this is our second round in a row we're talking about that was stopped. The fight was stopped between rounds because of the state of the fighter.
Thankfully.
Blessedly.
Yeah.
See what I did there?
Look at you.
See what I did there? That's his nickname. Anyway, round 4 is what we're talking about here because Max Holloway was just so dominant. So what was so dominant about this?
Oh, well, let's just start. This entire round is an outclassing in boxing. This is a boxing round for 90 7% of it.
Heavy.
Yeah. Max just punches him in the face and the body so many times for the entire 5 minutes.
And it's like all standing too.
Except for like the 5 seconds where Max was toying with the idea of dropping for a guillotine. He had him in a front headlock. He's like, do I choke him here? No, I'm just going to keep smashing him. Ortega's face is an absolute mess, and he's just too tough for his own good. He stayed on his feet. Basically, he didn't get knocked down. I don't recall Max actually knocking him down. Maybe that one that buckled him a little bit, where Ortega kind of turned it into a shot.
The UFC stats do not count any knockdowns. That doesn't look. The UFC stats have their thresholds. We see what we see, right?
Yeah. So he does hit him good, and it kind of like buckles him a little bit, and then Ortega kind of turns it into a double leg that goes nowhere, except for Max ending up in mount in the final couple seconds of the round, punching him in the face more and more times.
Do you want to know how many significant strikes and then total strikes that they land? But give me a number on significant.
Significant?
It's not much different for the total, but just go with significant.
I think Max hit 3 digits this round.
He did, but
105.
134.
Wow.
He landed 134 significant by UFC standard strikes, 141 total.
Every shot was so hard. This was such an outclassing that Max took a couple seconds to tell Ortega how to defend it.
It was
in the middle of it.
Yeah.
In the middle of a fight, he's telling him how to stop him from hitting him. It was I think you got overwhelming everything here. And it's not like Ortega wasn't throwing back.
Yeah,
it's just every time
he's not there.
He threw it back, and Max, it didn't affect him at all. I think this is all 3Ds, overwhelming variety, 10-7.
I agree, and also I should point out this is the only potential 10-7 round or actual 10-7 round that we're talking about. Correct me if I'm wrong. That is all stand up, like all stand up. It never goes to the ground for any reason. There's no
it ends up in the ground because Max ends up in mount, and then Ortega does that crazy thing where he throws his legs all the way back to wrap his legs like in reverse guard and attack a leg, and then Max is like, give me my leg back. This is stupid, and just punch him in the face again.
That's right. And actually, there is another round. I am speaking a little out of turn on this, but it's one of the very rare rounds that is almost entirely striking, is what I should say.
Okay.
Because a lot of these that we're going to talk about end up at the ground for one reason or another, and oftentimes that's why it ends up being so dominant. But this is a different type of round, and I'm with you. This is a 10-7. If this isn't a 10-7 round, what is? This is the question. Like, when you're talking about striking specifically, what more are you looking? Does he have to knock him down? I don't think knocking down is as important as hurting them. If they're standing up and they're hurt, but you knock them down and they're not as hurt, I don't care. Like, it's the optics versus the actual effect, right? When we're talking about judging, we're talking about effect. We're not talking about the way it looks. It's the effect of and if someone is not, like Felipe Arantes is knocked down several times, 4 times, 2 of those, we don't think he's that hurt at all.
Exactly.
But I would say,
right, there's different
Brian Ortega is hurt way more terribly throughout this round than Felipe Arantes is at any point against Josh Emmett.
Right.
So I feel really strongly about this one being what should be a 10-7 based on, again, our understanding of it, overwhelming damage, dominance, and duration, all 3. So I'm with Sal D'Amato here. This is his second 10-7 that he actually put forth, right?
This is the round I wanted to push it back against as most damaging.
I see. Okay.
Because here's my point. I think a lot of Dalloway's what it appeared to be can be attributed to just being completely gassed.
I guess that's
exhausted.
possible. But think about it like this: if put this fight in a real world setting here, right? If we're in the position where CB Dalloway is lying there and getting punched, who's closer to dying?
He's gonna die. Yeah.
You know what I mean? I know that's like a weird bar and a very morbid, especially with the context of what we're talking about this week. But it's kind of the real world application that you can kind of make to it, and that's why I do think he was more damaged here. I think it damaged and diminished. I think that kind of all
diminished. I got
you know. I think that does go hand in hand. Maybe perhaps my interpretation of that is incorrect, and any officials listening, set me straight if you need to.
That helps me get to when we discuss later some suggestions.
Because diminished is a very clearly their portion of the criteria.
Can we? I don't want to get that into that section yet because we're not there yet.
No, we're not there yet.
But I'd rather
Don't put the cart before the horse, sir.
Diminishment as its own D, possibly.
How many Ds do you want to put in here?
I want to get rid of duration, but
I got a D for you right here.
So
whoa,
Come on, Scott. We're a kids show.
It's a kid. Yeah, it's a kid's show. That's right. My children listen to this at school. On the way to school, I make them listen to every episode, and then they always give it a 5-star review.
Thank you. I'm glad someone is.
My kids are 7 and 5, by the way. But anyway, so yeah, I should note the other two judges, local Canadian judges, David Tarian and Dr. Gregory Jackson, not Greg Jackson of New Mexico.
Scott, you know what I want to point out real quick?
What do you want to point out?
I don't know if you noticed this or not.
Mm.
All these 10-7s happened outside of the U.S.
I was gonna point that out.
Okay.
You beat me to it. Good job, sir. Yes, every time that there has been a known 10-7, at least in the modern criteria era, it has occurred outside of the United States of America. No American commissions have had that. And I'm not saying that that's on purpose. I think a lot of the fights we're actually going to be talking about are just outside of the country. They're in different places. Not all of them.
Could just be coincidence, yeah.
I think a lot of it is coincidence, but I do wonder, because commissions can be a little different in the United States in particular about this.
Mm.
I do wonder if there is a degree of, even if it's in the back of a judge's mind, is it don't pull the 7 because we're not, the commissions aren't going to be, in favor of it. I'm not saying even any judge would think that, but is it there? I don't know. I'm just positing that as a potential thing there, because some commissions do not like them. They're especially now we've seen some commissions have pushed back on the idea that 10-8 should be given in certain situations, right? So how do they feel about 10-7s? I do not know. This is just food for thought. I'll leave it there.
Yep. We still got one more.
We do have one more. The final known 10-7 round from a UFC fight the last 6 years or so. At UFC on ESPN, Cater versus Ige. This was the first one that happened on our watch as a program. July 16, 2020. The first Fight Island event at Abu Dhabi, United Arab Emirates.
Where everyone fell in love with Chimaev.
Everyone learned who Boris Hamzat Chimaev was when he went there and just destroyed John Phillips with a second round submission by Bravo choke. Round one. Bravo? I always say it wrong. I always say it, dude.
It's just a Darce.
I know.
It's weird how sometimes they're called Darces and others kind of call them Bravo.
I am not the expert in where you classify one submission or another. Jamie
explained it one time.
Yeah.
It's just there was at Henzo's.
Jamie Cruz, our professor.
Yeah. I think there was a guy named Bravo who just used it and called it the Bravo.
All right.
Or something like that. Or maybe Darce, Joe Darce was the one hitting it.
Darce is a person, yeah.
Yeah, so
I don't think there's a Bravo.
That's why. Okay, so I got that mixed up. So I think Joe Darcy was at Henzo's and it would just hit this move, and they called it the Darce. So.
Yeah, but
anyway.
Anyway,
yeah,
we're going to talk about round one though, because round two is the finish, obviously. Round one, and this amazingly, this is the only one that was actually stopped during a round of any of the five fights anyway. But round one before that was the most dominant round, one of the most dominant rounds that we have seen. Let's talk about it here. What happened?
Well. Immediate double leg and immediately around to the back to the top turtle and just hammering away for the entire round. He barely took any breaks. Phillips' face is bloodied and it's 5 minutes pillar to post beatdown. Borsch just smashed for 5 straight minutes. John Phillips had no business in there this night.
No.
It was 5 minutes of nonstop beatdown. That's it. I just in that turtle position against the cage, kept punching him in the face. His face is a mess. That's it. All 3 overwhelming. I think that's a nice 10-7.
That's how I have it too. I see it that way. I do think it's like a steady build. We saw in Murtazaliev, we saw a very rapid rise up. It was almost like a rocket that shot from the 9 to the 7, right?
Mm-hmm.
It went way past the 8 into the 7. And here I feel like it's just a slow ride. It's like, oh yeah, obviously he's winning this. He's totally in control, and Phillips is doing nothing, and he's steadily beating him. I don't think there's like big there's not monster shots landing. There's none of those monster shots, but pretty much anything that Chimaev's landing has intentions on it. There's not a whole lot of pitter patter here.
There had to be 100 something.
You want the number?
Yeah, because there's
118.
He just doesn't.
That's
stop.
total strikes instead of significant strikes, right? Significant strikes only 40.
It is.
But I feel like it's a lot. Again, you know how I feel about significant strikes versus insignificant strikes.
It's just stupid.
Yeah, it's dumb. It doesn't matter.
There had to be at most one like 5-second break in between punches.
It's just not a whole lot. Yeah, I mean,
It's just
he's
steady
pacing
the
himself, but
whole
he's
way.
not like, there's no breaks. There's no like, oh, I got to catch my breath. And there's not like the moments where he's doing body head, right? You know?
Honestly, it feels like Phillips is drowning.
Yeah.
That's really what it feels like.
I think that kind of speaks to the metaphor of the kind of working slowly. I think that's good. I like
Mhm.
that. Yeah, I feel good about this one being a 10-7. So did Mark Collette. He pulled the trigger. Good on him. Mark Collette, by the way, I should point out, is the other one who pulled the 7 in that Cage Warriors,
Okay.
which I believe Soren Bach, who's now with Bellator, I believe he won that round. I meant to watch it before this. I watched a lot of rounds, guys. Give me a break. We weren't going to talk about it anyway. So, but yeah, so I saw it as Mark Collette did. So did you. Judges Lucas Posaki, another Polish name who I'm sure I'm screwing up too. I probably said it wrong as well, but him and David Leatherby. I believe I have that right. And they were the ones who gave the 8. I get it. It's tough. Where's the bar? You know.
I don't know.
But I will say David Leatherby ends up on a lot of these rounds. He's had the good fortune or bad fortune, depending on whose perspective you're at, to see firsthand a lot of rounds that are potential 10-8.
Yeah, well, that's it. It's overseas.
That's true. A lot of these teams, I don't know, for whatever reason, the fights that actually have this happen just seem to happen overseas too. I don't know what it is.
Well, does Canada count as overseas?
Well, no, because it's not over the seas.
Yeah,
It's over land.
Yeah, but I mean,
The-
2 of them were Canada.
By definition, sir.
Unless
It's outside of our borders.
over the lakes.
Outside of our border. That's what we can go with here. But that is it for the actual 10-7 round. Again, we actually have quite a few that are unanimous 10-8s that we wanted to at least go into with consideration for, could these be 7s or 8s, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think we should do this just a little bit differently. So I'm going to set it up what it is. You're going to say what it is. And then we're just going to very quickly at least get into, okay, how'd you have it? Did you have it as an 8 or a 7? And if we both agree it's an 8, let's just say, hey, why not? So we don't have to dwell too deep on those. But if there's some potential for the 7, I think we should talk about it more.
Okay.
Does that sound good?
Yeah.
I like it. Let's go into that now. Starting with, and again, we're going in chronological order here as well. We are going with UFC 236 in Atlanta on April 13, 2019. You note that we didn't have anything in 2019 that actually had a 10-7. There were none that year in the UFC.
Okay.
Israel Adesanya, everyone I think remembers this fight, over Kelvin Gastelum by unanimous decision, 48-46 times 3. Just your typical 48-46, all 3 cards. Round 5 of this absolute classic fight. That is what we're talking about here as a potential for a 10-7. It was all 8s. Judges Nate Mann, Will Fisher, and Sal D'Amato had the 8 here. What happened here? Real quick. What are we talking about?
It was competitive for a little while. Whoever said Adesanya didn't have a ground game, they were proven wrong on this one. Locking up that he goes to attack the solid guillotine standing.
No, technically, ground game. We're talking about a standing. It's a little different. It's a little different, but yeah, I get you. Grappling game.
Yeah.
Submission game.
It turned into him getting taken down, and then he locks up a really nice triangle. It's like,
yeah, there's the
this was solid here. But from here on out, it kind of felt like Adesanya was taking over. I think we're still at a solid 10-9 until the final minute, when maybe a minute plus, where Adesanya drops him 3 times, lands some good strong shots on the ground. I do think we checked the damage. You definitely have enough damage to go 10-7. Meaning overwhelming damage. I don't really know if he checked the duration that much. Possibly overwhelming dominance. I thought he probably did with the 3 knockdowns.
What would you say? What's the score?
I'm at 10-8.
I'm at 8. I'm also at 8. And I should also point out, I did name the wrong judges. It's Mike Bell, Anthony Manus, and Ken Coffey. Those are the 3 judges in this one. The judges I just named before are actually on the next fight, which is the same night, by the way. Same pay-per-view card.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm also on the 8. Why is this not an 8?
I really don't think the
why
duration.
is this not 7?
I don't think the duration got there.
Okay.
It's like a minute, maybe a minute 30. If I'm probably exaggerating on that. It's probably just closer to a minute of where Adesanya just puts it on him, drops him 3 times. I kind of do get the overwhelming dominance because of the 3 knockdowns. I mean, he just took over, but there's other portions of this fight that aren't in that realm. Like
Yeah, it feels
So-
more like how, I mean, a little different than Murtaza Aliyev because that was a very strange round. But like there's at least some competitive back and forth in this one
Mhm.
that goes beyond
He-
like a minute or something like that, right?
He lands. Gaslam's landing some shots.
Yeah, it just doesn't feel overwhelming, which is the that level that we're looking
Mhm.
for, which is a high bar. So yeah, I don't think it's there. I think it's just an 8. I'm with you. Anything else you had?
I mean, I'd be down. I'd be down for this being a 7 though.
There's almost every single
So-
one of these that we're going to talk about. I feel like I would love a version of the world that has a reason for this to be a 7. Maybe not all, but we'll kind of wrap at the end. We'll kind of share some conclusions about these rounds and maybe where we'd like to see language go. But yeah, I'm with you. If this was 7, if the world existed where this was supposed to be a 7, I'd be pretty happy. But it's just not. So here we are, giving it 8s. This is not a 7 in our estimation. I know a lot of people probably watch this and think, okay, maybe this should be a 7. Again, I'm with you. It should be. I just don't think it is. So we move on, though. Again, a couple fights before this. This is a very lopsided UFC card in Atlanta. But fun. This is still kind of a wild, fun fight in its own way. Khalil Roundtree Jr. getting the win over Eric Anders, also by unanimous nod, 30-26 times 3. Round 2 is where they all thought this was an 8. Why are we talking about this round?
Well, I score this one an 8.
Okay, I have it at
10-8.
an 8 too, but
Let's
why?
start with- Roundtree drops him 4 times in this round. Lands some leg kicks every time he goes down. Once in a while, he'll drop a hammer fist.
Four knockdowns.
Four
By the way,
different
you need to
times.
know that just how
So-
rare this actually is. It really just doesn't happen that often
So-
where you're knocked down 4 times. There's the Emmett fight. There's this fight. There's I think it was actually 3 or 4 knockdowns in Adesanya, right?
I think it was 3.
Yeah, 3
In that round.
They didn't quite get there.
But he's kicking the legs. Like I say, he'll drop down for hammer fists every once in a while. But for the most part, he's waiting for him to get stood back up and then rinse and repeat. Crack him, knock him down, kick his legs a little bit, get stood up, crack him, knock him down. He did this 4 times. He just never goes in for that kill. I mean, I think you definitely have overwhelming dominance. Anders can't hang on the feet.
Hyper overwhelming
So-
dominance. Yeah, I think that's absolutely there.
Anders definitely hurt. It's just Roundtree needs to go in there and end it.
He's hurt, but he's not. Eric Anders just doesn't ever seem hurt in a way that's like uncomfortable, right?
He's with it.
Yeah, he's with it, but also it's largely because Roundtree is just not pursuing. The duration of the damage is very short. It's brief. It happens, and then it's over. And granted, there is certainly damage to the leg of Eric Anders, and that's obviously compromising him and probably making it hard for him to stay on his feet. So that's why I wonder sometimes if he's knocked down here, is part of it just because he just doesn't have his feet under in the same way. How badly is he even really hurt? I don't know. And maybe Roundtree even knows that too. He's like, I'm not going to go down with him. I don't think he's that hurt. I want him up.
Well, yeah. Well, he obviously knew where his advantage
His bread and
was.
butter
So-
was for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
so-
you can see when Anders does get hurt, he's in control of his body.
Sure.
When he gets knocked down, his head's not snapping back. He's still in a defensive posture every time. So I don't know. Yeah, I think you got something there.
Yeah, it's. I think it's just an 8. And the judges I should note on this one were Nate Mann, Will Fisher, and that guy D'Amato.
That guy.
That guy who gave the other two. The only man who gives 2 10-7s in UFC cards since the criteria changed. But again, Mark Collette had 2 because you count that Cage Warriors one. It happened. It happened. It's just not what we're talking about today. It's a real round. It's not fiction. We're moving forward a year, and this again, we're starting to actually enter the period of time where the couchside judges was evaluating these things. We didn't have as strong an understanding of the criteria as we do, especially now, but even a few months later, we actually learned a lot more. So when we talked about this one, we had a little bit different understanding, right? I don't remember what we said. Don't go back and listen. We didn't. We don't want to. It's not a good idea. Not gonna do it. UFC 249, the first pay-per-view upon the return from the pandemic. May 9, 2020, Jacksonville, Florida. Bryce Mitchell on the undercard defeats Charles Rosa, unanimous decision, 2 30-25s and a 30-24. So I think you get the sense that maybe one of these guys was in the fight and the other wasn't. We're actually going to talk about 2 rounds here. Rounds 1 and 3. They were both unanimous 10-8s. Did you give it for either one of these? Did you give a 7?
No, it went 8.
All right. I also did. Let's talk about round 1 first and then say why this is not an.
Well, round 1, it's all grappling.
Excuse me, why it's not a 7. Sorry.
Yeah, this whole both these rounds are entirely spent on the ground. And Bryce Mitchell getting to the back very quickly or attacking arm triangles left and right.
Deep arm triangles, especially in this round, yeah.
Rosa, credit to him defending, but These are very, very deep subs. He's getting caught in the twister.
There's even the part
position.
where he almost looked like he was going to tap, right?
Was
to
there
the arm
one?
triangle very
It's
early.
possibly,
it almost looked
yeah.
like he took the whole thing. We would never talk
Yeah,
about
he
these
must
rounds.
have.
He almost tapped, but he was. I felt like he was okay. And look, Rosa has good jits, right? So
Yeah, it was nonstop from Bryce Mitchell getting it to the ground, attacking subs, almost getting subs, punching every now and again.
right,
Overwhelming dominance, no doubt.
Oh, yeah.
Overwhelming duration, no doubt.
absolutely.
But what is overwhelming damage in terms of grappling?
That's the fantastic question that I have, and this is why this was like a round we had to talk about. It's exactly why.
He has multiple sub attempts, and to Rosa's credit, he's able to defend and escape them. But once you escape a sub, you're not really diminished.
Unless
You're
it maybe
still-
tweaked your arm or something like that, right? But like, yeah,
the
choke.
Tony Ferguson's arm popping versus Charles Oliveira. There you go.
Maybe that's
might
what
be.
it is. Maybe
But
that's what it has to be, I guess.
In most sense, overwhelming damage in terms of grappling is you're snoring and the fight's over, or a limb is broken and the ref's calling a technical sub. It shouldn't be so far like that. You should be able to define what overwhelming damage is when it comes to grappling, or have, I don't want to say different criteria, but or different ways to get to a 10-7 without just punching your opponent.
I agree. It's mixed martial arts, so it shouldn't. If we're evaluating submissions as damage, we need to know what overwhelming is. Is it an arm getting popped but the fight continuing? Is that what it takes?
I know, but
'Cause
that's
I watched that fight too. That was one I considered, and it was
Mhm.
was one of the most damaging rounds you could think of with just grappling. But
Yeah.
I didn't go deep. We didn't want to watch that round or talk about this round. We have a lot already.
hmm
But yeah, this is about as dominant as I think you can get in terms of submission attempts. Like, unless he's in a twister for 4.5 minutes and obviously in agony, but just guts it out.
most likely
What else?
paralyzed.
Oh
at
yeah,
that
yeah.
point,
At that point,
so,
he's not going to be the same human anymore. I don't think that's realistic. There probably ought to be an avenue for this to be a 7, but there absolutely is not. Like, the way I interpret it anyway, the way you interpret it too. 'Cause
Mhm.
we just gave this an 8.
Yeah, I mean, Rosa is completely defensive the entire fight.
And that does speak more to
So,
the
the
dominance.
dominance, yeah.
Exactly. It's not necessarily the damage, but nonetheless, again, we're talking about submission attempts that were locked in there for like a while, and
Mhm.
they're really good attempts too. It's not kind of that like cooking them kind of thing, or it's not maybe like a half attempt or like just throws up triangles and that kind of thing. These are attempts that are in. They're pretty in.
Bryce Mitchell,
Maybe not as in to really get the job done, obviously, but
he had no intentions of going to the scorecards.
No,
He was
absolutely not.
trying to end.
Absolutely, and I
So-
think that's the type of thing that ought to be rewarded in the criteria and by the judges. That's
And
how I
not
think.
only trying, he was very close. He was
Yeah.
getting to the subs.
Yeah.
It just happens.
It's
Rosa's
not
really
intent,
good
it's
also
actual
at
effect there.
defense. Yeah, so
effective offense. This is effective offense, hyper effective offense. So, what about round 3? What's different here?
not as many sub attempts.
Yeah,
That's basically. I think this is just a 10-8.
yeah, I agree.
I wouldn't have a strong case to give this one a 10-7.
The only reason I wanted to put this on here was kind of because it's obviously in the same fight. We're kind of being able to
Yeah.
illustrate what's different about this one compared to the other one.
Yeah, this was more so getting to dominant positions and not. And he's still.
He is still attacking subs.
He's still overwhelming.
He's looking for
Rosa.
the
Yeah,
the
of
twister
course.
again.
He's just not. He's not getting as close.
No, I don't think so.
So-
I think the arm triangle in round 1 is actually what really makes the case for that being such a bigger round, because that arm
Yeah.
triangle was really close.
It was really close, but you know what? I was crediting Rosa's defense, like the way his answer the phone technique. It seemed a lot.
Well, you don't credit
a lot-
defense, sir.
I know we don't credit defense. I'm saying as far as like, oh wow, maybe that's why he's a black belt.
Mhm.
The way he was using that answer the phone defense, it seemed different than when other people do it.
Okay.
It just seemed like that's the way you're supposed to do it.
Yeah, I mean, Charles Rosa is
So-
absolutely not a joke in terms of grappling.
Right.
It just, obviously Bryce Mitchell was at least that day on a totally another level.
He was an animal.
Mm-hmm. The judges, by the way, the ones who gave the 10-8 here and didn't go the 7, again, same as us, were Derek Cleary, Barry Luxembourg, and Troy Winkapaw, the latter two being judges who typically just judge in Florida. Derek Cleary, of course, judges a lot. We talk about him all the time.
Mhm.
But that was it for Mitchell and Rosa. Let's fast forward. We're going to go really, really far into the future for this one. 4 days later. 4 days later. We're already talking about another one here. And again, I don't think anybody was watching that round, the Mitchell round, saying the 7 should be rewarded. But again, I think that's something we needed to talk about, the potential for grappling, right? This one's a little different.
These were exciting times.
It really was, because we had nothing else to do, did we?
We're getting fights on Wednesdays.
It was a wild time. UFC Fight Night, Smith versus Teixeira on May 13, 2020, again in Jacksonville. They did 3 events in a week in Jacksonville. And again, this was the headliner, Smith and Teixeira. Teixeira gets the win. He was not winning this fight earlier, and then he comes back and just totally dominates this fight at some point over Anthony Smith. Round 5 is where he gets the TKO. But we're going to talk about rounds 3 and 4 here. Let's just start with 3. Talk about what happened here. Don't even say your score yet. What happened?
Smith cracks. Not Smith. I'm sorry. Glover cracks Smith with an uppercut that just has Smith completely,
like early, like in the first minute.
Like, oh my God, Glover, where did that come from?
And it looked like the fight may have been ending there.
He follows it up with a left hook that just crumbles Smith straight to the ground. And Glover follows him to the ground, starts pounding him. Starts looking for chokes every now and again. Kind of like taking the foot off the gas, maybe, trying to conserve a little energy. Chokes are not really getting there or getting that close, and if he keeps striking in these positions, I think he probably gets a finish.
I don't know. Smith is really tough.
I do think the fight could have been stopped a couple times and no one would have had an issue at all with it.
Mm-hmm.
I do think Smith is hurt multiple times in this round.
But you don't see this as the same degree of maybe where Herb Dean let it go a lot. I don't think we talked much about Herb Dean letting the fight go and Murtaza Aliyev. I thought that fight should have been stopped earlier. I don't think they feel that way anymore. I think at the time we actually did. We thought this fight should have ended earlier, and we were critical of it. A lot of people were critical of it. In retrospect, I'm much less critical of the refereeing here, more so the cornering.
Yeah, I agree. More so the cornering, especially now. Hindsight even further.
Yeah.
Who knows what the deal with that was then?
Yeah.
Anyway, I do think all 3 Ds are the overwhelming variety. I think this is a strong portion of the round is a beatdown.
Mm-hmm.
And
it got uncomfortable. And that's like, I feel like that's like a word that really could be codified in, maybe it can't be codified in there, but because legally it wouldn't look good. But
if you got to turn away, 10-7.
Or if you're like muttering under your breath, like, geez, I feel like once it gets there, that's where it's kind of like you're understanding you're watching something rare, especially if you're the type who watches fights for either a living or just all the time. Like there were 511 fights last year in the UFC, right? 511. I watched all of them at one point or another. I watched probably between Bellator and PFL and elsewhere, just of fights that occurred last year. I probably watched somewhere in the neighborhood of 750. And then there's guys who watch way, way more than me, And there's Caposo who watches 10,000 fights a year because he's crazy. And I mean that in a good way.
I wonder what he's watching right now.
Boxing. He's actually watching boxing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Gervonta Davis, another one beater.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah. This round got to the 7 for me.
Yeah, me too.
It got to the 7 for me then when I didn't even know as well. But I tried to toss that out when I watched this again, and I watched this twice in the lead up to this. I watched all of these rounds twice just to kind of refamiliarize. And I think this is a 7.
Yeah, to get back to your point, a lot of the commentary on a lot of these rounds are stop the fight. Stop the fight.
And you have to acknowledge that, too.
So,
I'm glad you brought that up because you do have to acknowledge that starts to creep into your head.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. If you're sitting at home, that can creep into your head. But having said that, I mean, you can watch this in Espanol and not know and all that, or you can watch it on mute, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I did not take the time to try to watch these in Spanish. I don't remember if Fight Pass even actually has it. Usually I do that on ESPN. All these I watched through Fight Pass. It gets uncomfortable. The damage gets uncomfortable, and I think he's overwhelmingly dominant in both the grappling and even the portions of the striking phase on the stand up for the duration of the round. I think this is what a 10-7 ought to be.
Okay.
Now, none of the judges went that way. Judges Dave Torelli, Chris Lee, and Sal D'Amato. Again, Sal has given 10-7s before. He didn't pull the trigger here for one reason or another. Not critical of any judge in the sense, because again, there's just so few of these. But
originally I was critical.
We were we were very critical because we didn't understand.
I had I remember exactly what happened. We had Rob Hines on, and
not long after, it was right after, right?
yeah, right after we critiqued this, because my reasoning was the very first line of the 10-7 area where it says a 10-7 round in MMA is when a fighter is completely overwhelming their opponent in effective strike and or grappling, and a stoppage is warranted.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I don't even need to read it any further because a stoppage is warranted like 2 or 3 times here.
Right.
So that's why I was like 10-7. And then Rob Hines was like, there's like more to that you need to read.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, okay.
We should read more sentences
Yeah.
than one.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, I was like, we already fit the criteria.
boom. Done.
Write it in Sharpie 10-7.
It is a little different, yeah. But having said that, I still feel like this is a 10-7. Is it the strongest of the potential 10-7s? You know that it's the first one we're actually saying of the 10-8s where you're giving the 7 here, but it's still probably a little more borderline than say like again Gavin Tucker and getting his butt kicked by Ricky Glenn.
Honestly, I think I attribute that to the pauses that Glover takes to search
so, too.
for chokes that really aren't there.
But also, you do kind of have to factor in that Glover Teixeira and Anthony Smith, these are bigger boys. Glover hits harder than any of them.
Yeah.
This is the largest man that we're talking about among any of these, I believe, actually. So when he hits, he definitely hits harder.
Well, that's what, like I said, when he hit him with
Yeah.
that uppercut, it felt like Anthony Smith was like, oh my God, what was that?
Because you usually see a fight like that just
Yeah.
meet its typical end. But it
Mhm.
goes on for another 2+ rounds.
Mhm.
It's just
He loses 2 teeth in this fight.
it was 2 teeth.
Well, I noticed this because he hands the one tooth to
Well, we're gonna talk about that round. Let's move into round 4.
I got you.
We're gonna talk about
Okay.
round 4 here too. Let's do it.
I forgot which rounds.
No, that's
it
right. It's
happened
round 4 is what.
So-
What are you talking about? You forgot.
I forgot which rounds he lost his
I
teeth
see.
in.
Yeah, no, it
Oh,
was
so-
round 4 here.
Okay.
It was round 4. Yeah, so go
Yeah,
talk
yeah,
about round
yeah.
4 because you forgot it.
Yeah. Similar to round 3, except Smith isn't hurt as badly this go.
It gets down pretty quick though. Again, he's definitely gets
yeah.
stung.
Glover does more grappling on the ground this time. I don't know if it was cruel or sympathetic on Glover's part by making Smith suffer longer.
Well, after
I
he
don't
does,
know.
if he does take after we see and we find out later exactly what we see. Anthony Smith picks up his own tooth that had been knocked
Right.
out of his mouth
Mhm.
and tries to hand it to Jason Herzog, who's right there, who accepts the tooth,
Right.
like the Tooth Fairy.
Mm-hmm.
And right after that, you have Glover share. It's like Glover kind of paused to allow him to do that
Mm-hmm.
because first off, I've only spoken to Glover one time. It was a nice conversation, but I wouldn't say I know him or anything like that. But the guy just seems like a freaking gentleman. He seems like a good human in a lot of ways. And to see him do that, first off, seemingly giving a pause to the action, just allow his tooth not to be lost when he could easily do that. And then he apologizes for, the way it is. It's just like, oh, it's just part of the job. And Anthony Smith goes, yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah.
And they just keep going.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Well, as I was saying,
Is that not the most bizarre, thing you've ever heard in a fight?
handing your tooth to someone?
No, not that, but the fact that they talked about it during the fight.
Oh yeah, it's kind of.
It's such a strange sequence. It's like the most strange sequence ever.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Okay. As I was saying, then there's another part of the round where there's someone outside the cage, motioning to their own mouth
Mm-hmm.
at Jason Herzog. He's like this,
Mm-hmm.
and then you see Herzog in the background bend down and pick something up off the mat.
I see.
So I think it was probably a second tooth.
Okay, maybe I don't know. I don't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, this round, despite the fact that his tooth is knocked out or teeth,
Yeah.
it does not feel quite as bad as the
It
third
doesn't.
round.
No. This is I'm very comfortable on it. Just a 10-8
I'm
here.
good with this being an 8. I mean, again, we would love the definition to include this.
Yeah.
That would
Yeah.
be fine. But yeah,
Yeah.
it does feel different than round 3. Round 3 feels like the round that's like,
Mhm.
oof, this got rough. Whereas the second one, the tooth just is like, what the heck? But he's so lucid in that moment that he can give the tooth.
Mhm.
And again, Glover is kind of almost seemingly letting off the gas a little bit. Yeah. Whether it's mercy or terrible. I think it's meant to be mercy.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think? He's sinisterly trying to drag this out?
Dude, that's what it kind of.
No.
I didn't know if he was
I
trying
don't think so.
trying to be
Glover,
cruel.
Glover
Like
seems like a good dude.
couple bang 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 shots.
I don't think
And then
so.
he's like, "Oh, thank God, it's gonna be over soon." And he's like, "Nope,
Nope, I got you more.
gotcha."
No, because he would have hit him. He would have hit him when he's got his tooth. He's trying to hit it out. That would be cruel. That'd be, but also fair in the terms of engagement, right? But that is it for this fight. Again, we're gonna fast forward pretty far here to the end of the month. And we're still in May 2020. This is May 30th. It was a very, very lopsided, competitive, balanced round, I guess, or month, right? UFC on ESPN card Woodley versus Burns. That fight was lopsided too, but we're not.
I don't know. Burns rocked him. Burns rocked Usman.
No. Burns Woodley versus Burns.
Oh, Woodley Burns. I'm sorry. I thought
You're
it was
thinking of the
Usman.
wrong fight,
I was in the wrong fight.
Oh
My bad.
yeah, no.
My bad.
No, this was in the string of fights where Tyron Woodley just stopped being able to fight competitively against the top guys.
I
against
gotcha.
the top guys, and then
gotcha.
also Jake Paul. But neither here nor there. We're not talking about that fight. We're talking about earlier in the card, Kayla Chookagian. First woman's fight, by the way, that we're talking about here, who got a very dominant win. Your very easy, normal 30-25 times 3 over Antonina Shevchenko. Tables were turned against the other Shevchenko. She was not competitive in that.
This was revenge tour.
It's a little different. Round 1 and 2, we're going to talk about both of these fights, and let's just lift the lid here. Are either of these a 7 for you?
No,
they're not for me either. But let's talk about them anyway, because I think there's some merit to the conversation about them. So why don't you start with round 1?
It goes back to Mitchell and Rosa.
Mm-hmm.
I think 100%.
It's all a grappling round, yeah.
Chookagian has the overwhelming dominance in duration. She has solid damage, but she just doesn't hit hard. Her shots just don't look that damaging.
There doesn't seem to be,
but she's throwing a lot of them.
Yeah, oh yeah. And she's getting me the unch.
Yeah.
Which when I was watching this the second time with my kids, they were just having a ball listening to her. Is she saying punch? Punch. Yeah, they had a great time.
So yeah, I mean, she had that one choke, rear naked choke that was really tight. Just it wasn't there, or didn't happen. Mm-hmm. Not saying it wasn't there because it was 100% in.
She didn't get the conclusion she was hoping for.
She didn't get the tap. So she just starts punching. She threw a ton of punches. That's the difference between this round and Mitchell's round.
It's a lot of punching and less submissions that are getting uber close, right?
And I think I saw the stats, and I think they credited her with 18 significant strikes.
I can tell you in a moment.
80 total thrown. So this is you can't score the round any other way, and it's outclassing. One person is completely lost, the other one's completely dominating them.
Yeah. So round 1, it was 20 significant strikes and 70 total strikes. So again, those numbers are stupid, but they are where they are. I don't think the damage is there for this one. I think that's the main issue. Is we're really not. It's not even very significant damage. I think you get this round to the 8 pretty easily because there's uber dominance and uber duration, but it's maybe less damaging, but also there's so many strikes being landed that you can at least say, okay, there's an accumulation here. I'm feeling good with this one being an 8, but it's probably even closer to a 9 than a 7. Would you say that's fair?
No.
You wouldn't? Okay.
I would think it's kind of just dead in the middle.
Okay.
I think it's an 8 is what it is.
It's just perfectly where it's supposed to be.
If you scored this a 9, crazy.
Yeah, I think I would
score this a 7, I think also crazy.
It's just where it ought to be.
But that's fair. But it also brings back to that conversation. What's overwhelming damage?
When you're on the ground, with grappling and stuff. And again, I think it does at least illustrate the difference between Mitchell. Like you said, Mitchell's going for these submissions that are getting hyper close, and they seem to be this round in particular almost seems more similar to the round 3 of Mitchell and Rosa, where it's just not quite getting there to approach the levels. So I don't know that even if I was to expand 10-7s, other than in our own proprietary couch side judges scoring criteria, which we expand them heavily. So eights basically just become 7s. If I was to make more modest tweaks, I guess, to the 7, ones that I would hope could actually really go through reasonably and quickly, if people can actually get on board and want and motivated to do it, I don't know that I would still put this as a 7. I think it's still an 8.
Yeah, I think you're probably right there.
Do you think round 2 of this fight is any different? I mean, and we're both still on this.
It's different in the sense that she doesn't have any subs this round. It's any sub attacks. But it's the same round with no subs.
Yeah,
so
it's even
still
to a
an 8,
degree,
but it's less.
Yeah. And the judges, I should point out on this one, were Derek Cleary, Eric Colon, and Dave Hagen. We started seeing a lot of these names, especially in Las Vegas, where this was around this time, because they kind of parked out at the UFC Apex for a while. Mm-hmm. Still there,
just hanging out.
UFC Vegas.
I did.
UFC
notice,
Vegas 67 coming up this weekend.
I did notice there's a fight night in Vegas, not at the Apex. They're doing it at the Mirage, I believe.
That is true.
That's kind of wild. Maybe they're moving out of the Apex at some point.
I think they're probably just trying to experiment a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's just a guess here. We do have 3 more rounds to get to from 2 different fights. Let's start with the one that has 2 of those rounds, actually. That was, again, we're fast forwarding to the next year. We're actually out of March 2020. It stopped happening. There was no more. There weren't them anymore. January 16, 2021, we're back in Abu Dhabi for Fight Island. UFC on ABC. And another guy we were just talking about before, Max Holloway versus Calvin Kattar. Another name we actually mentioned because the Chimaev round happened on a Kattar headlined card. This one, these 2 rounds, we should say, are in Max Holloway's completely dominant 50-43 twice and 50-42. Again, just totally normal numbers. Victory, unanimous decision over Calvin Kattar. We're going to talk about rounds 2 and 4 here that were unanimous. Let's start with 2. Is this a 7?
No.
I also agree, but let's talk about why it's not quite the 7.
Well, I think it's similar to that Dalloway round, I should say, where for the first 3:45 of the round is just a clear 10-9 for Holloway. Competitive round.
Right, but it stays on the side of the winner anyway.
Oh, yeah.
It's
a little different in that sense,
Yeah.
yes. But it's where it gets crazy in the final 80 seconds once he lands that one elbow that just splits him open. And then Holloway's like, whoa, I've unlocked a new technique, and just starts bashing him with elbows until the round's over. Punches elbows and, kind of shuts Kattar down a little bit. He's throwing back a little bit, but nothing that's affecting Holloway. I think he just easily gets to the 10-8. I don't really think it pushes that close to a 10-7.
Yeah, this just felt like a good 10-8. This was like, oh yeah, this is a good round. This is a nice 10-8 round.
Yeah.
Got to put the 8 down. And again, all 3 judges agreed. In this case, Mike Bell, Ben Cartledge, and David Leatherby. It was a mix of the top North American judges and the top UK judges and European judges that we were getting over in Fight Island at this time. I thought that was great, by the way, just to have kind of the best of both worlds coming together. It was like the all-star team of judging.
There was one of the fights where I think it was Mitchell Rose's, because it was in Jacksonville, where the commentary's like, we just learned about Fight Island. Where is Fight Island? What is it? No one had a clue, and then they're like, oh, all right, just Abu Dhabi.
Yeah. Yeah, that was way to build up our expectations. Is it going to be a floating island in the beach somewhere?
When they did their promotional pictures
so cool.
on the beach, I'm like, this is awesome. They're actually on an island. And then they're like, no, we're just in an arena.
We've secured an island. Oh my God. Shut up, Dana.
Genius marketing.
Yeah, still not the worst thing he's done lately. Anyway, yeah, I'm with you. This is a round 2 is just a 10-8. Round 4 is a little different though, my friend.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Let's talk about this round.
So it's another big round for Holloway. There's big damage. He is outclassing him, but he's also taking some big shots himself. Some shots where it made him actually reset, and he had to say, oh, well, okay, I got to respect that shot. That kind of stung me a bit. So because of those reasons, even though Kattar is hurt, you see him, he starts wobbling at some points and just getting maybe a tad bit uncomfortable, he's still in the fight a little bit. And I don't know if we're in that completely overwhelming territory yet to go 10-7. So I went 10-8.
I got uncomfortable watching this round, sir. Again, I keep bringing up that word uncomfortable, which, again, would never legally get into any criteria. There's no lawyer would be like, yeah, let's even, it makes you uncomfortable watching them. It's just not going to happen. But for all intents and purposes, if you're watching this round and you're comfortable with the level of damage that's being inflicted upon Calvin Kattar, I mean, there's... You might have less humanity than you think. I mean, I'm teasing, of course, but this definitely reaches the overwhelming damage.
I agree.
There's not a question, and the duration of the damage being dealt, I think, is just so high in this round. Because this is another Holloway round where he's just landing like strikes all over. He's setting
a great pace.
He is setting a hyper pace. It's just not. You just don't see this very often. He lands 141 strikes in this one.
I remember.
All of which were considered significant, by the way. I believe this actually is the record for significant strikes landed in a UFC round per UFC stats. It exceeded the ones from Ortega.
I remember watching this fight live and being like, oh, I wonder if someone's going to pull that 10-7. And when I watched it, I was getting uncomfortable. But then those strikes that Cater's landing that are making Holloway go, oh my, all right, calm down, Max. We're not completely invincible here. We're not, there is still some danger present. Came after the uncomfortable parts. I'm like, oh, did he fight himself back to a 10-8? And that's kind of where I'm at. So
I get it. I'm not saying you're crazy here. And again, because the bar for the 7 is just so freaking hard to find, right? We're obviously split here. You're seeing this as an 8 and I'm seeing this as a 7.
Mm-hmm.
I will grant that potentially it's almost less dominant because there is less of an outclassing, I guess, right? It's not overwhelmingly so.
I still do think it's an outclassing overall.
But oh yeah, it's an outclassing.
Yeah.
But is it that overwhelming? Because we're
That's
trying
what I said.
to look for overwhelming. I understand that.
Yeah.
I think we are there, actually. I do.
Okay.
But I can understand why it's not there for you.
Fair.
I think it's okay because, yes, despite the fact that there is offense being, and it can be good offense, but oh my goodness, it's just such a high degree. I don't know. Maybe I'm almost talking in a way that it's harder to defend this as a 7. I don't know. I can understand that too. If you're listening to me defend this and you think my position is weaker, fine. I get it. It's my position. I'm going to take it. So, but I see this as a 7. I think I can justify this as a 7. It's just such an uncomfortable round to watch. And I watched it twice in the last couple weeks. Wild round. But yeah, so we're split here. This is the first time we are split on the 8 and the 7. But again, I know you want this as a 7.
Oh yeah.
This should be a
7.
Yeah, easy. But yeah, it's a little more debatable. Probably the most debatable that we have in terms of actually getting there or not, right? The last round, we didn't have any in 2022 that really kind of pushed us that way. And we did see less 10-8s anyway scored, but I just didn't think that there were any that actually got there anyway to the level that we would actually talk about, or there wasn't anything maybe significantly different from some of these other rounds. Some of these are going to be review, right? This one's a little, this is its own fight.
This is the most uncomfortable I felt.
Very weird
watching.
One. UFC 267, October 30, 2021 in Abu Dhabi. Once again, I don't think they were calling it Fight Island anymore. I think they gave that up. This is just Abu Dhabi.
Okay.
Not Fight Island, Abu Dhabi. Whatever that means. Eliseu Zaleski dos Santos gets a clear unanimous decision win over Benoit Saint-Denis. 29-26 3 times.
It's not Benoit Saint-Denis?
You can call him that if you want, but that's
Okay.
wrong. And he's special forces in France. He'd probably wreck you, so don't bother.
Okay.
Also, he's in France, though, so he's not coming here. You're safe.
Okay.
For now. Anyway, get his name right, jerk.
Benoit
Round 2.
Saint-Denis.
Benoit Saint-Denis, I believe, but I'm not French, so I can't get it right. Round 2 is where we're going to talk about this very strange round. First off, did you have... we'll save it. Let's save it. Let's just talk about the round.
I was so torn. Damage overwhelming.
But what's happening? Let's talk about why we're talking about this round, because this is a strange one.
Okay, so easy DS.
Yeah, easy DS. That's fine.
It's just smashing him against the cage. He's hurt 20 different ways. Looks like you can stop it 10 different times. But Saint-Denis is just firing back every once in a while. Nothing crazy. It's just a real it's just a total beatdown for portions of this round. Not big portions, but portions where it's like, stop the fight. The one guy's clearly not in it. He's kind of done.
Very done for quite a while.
What are we doing here?
Yeah.
Like
you actually get, and again, this is commentary creeping into conscious, right?
I do, but
Daniel Cormier is sharp. Stop the fight.
I agree with them, though. I think
I don't disagree.
Definitely stop that fight.
And referee Vyacheslav Kiselev just, he wasn't into that. He's like, no, I want more.
No.
More.
Just bleed.
More. And by the way, he was removed. This referee was actually removed from the remainder of the card after this fight. I'm not necessarily a big fan of that, except in extreme circumstances. Here, I actually am okay with it, as I was worried about the safety of the fighter, and I didn't think the fighter was being protected in the best way.
I think here we have overwhelming dominance, overwhelming damage. I agree the fight should have been stopped, but I also not sure if duration's as overwhelming as it needs to be.
I do think duration's there. I think the question, though, is at that final minute, there's just not as much happening.
Yeah, he kind of takes his foot off the gas a little bit. That's where my questioning comes in.
I believe Saint-Denis even he lands something.
He does. He starts fighting back.
That's where we actually kind of get it, so that there's the pushback, almost like, but similar to what you were talking about with Calvin Kattar.
Not on that level.
It's
though.
different. Yeah, I agree.
It's like easy DS is like, okay, whatever, you hit me. I don't have 3 overwhelming Ds. I have 2. But should that matter? I don't know. I don't think it should.
I think I have 3 overwhelming Ds, but I think you're right. This again, it's very uncomfortable watching this round. It's very uncomfortable.
This one was the roughest one.
So yeah, This should be a 7. I think this is a 7. I would have liked to have seen a 7, but I, again, do not fault judges David Leatherby, Anders Olsen, or Clemens Werner.
Oh, I went 7 here.
Oh, you did?
I did go 7.
Oh, all right.
But I was torn.
Oh, I see. I was less torn.
Yeah, and I don't know if duration was as overwhelming as it needs to be.
Maybe I was just more willing to pull the 7s today than you. I don't know.
I was really torn on this one.
Sure.
So
no, I get it. But I mean, see, I ended up on the 7. But yeah, definitely a very strange round. Yeah. And then we haven't seen anything quite like this since. Like I said, there was nothing in 2022 in the UFC anyway that approached. That is all of our rounds, ladies and gentlemen.
All the rounds.
All the rounds. We talked about 16 rounds in this.
That many rounds we talked about?
I believe so.
Well, I think we blended a couple together.
Well, yeah, well, you did. I was trying not to.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah, sorry. Well, like a lot of these were in one fight because there would be 2 unanimous 10-8s in a fight.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, well, why were we only going to talk about just the one? I think we should at least illustrate the difference between one and the other. That's why I figured we should include, like, let's say both of them from Bryce Mitchell and Charles Rosa, and both of them from Caitlin Chukagian and Nancy Shevchenko. Both of them from Teixeira and Smith, too, because these are different, right? We're watching different rounds.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that made sense. So, yeah, we ended up with 5 of them that were with the actual 10-7s, and 11 that were all 10-8s. But yeah, we ended up overturning well, I guess it's not an override because we don't have anybody with us on these, but we agreed that we should have seen 2 more, 2.5, because I went when you didn't. we were split on the one, so it wouldn't get there. But yeah, the couchside judges would have liked to see 2 more 10-7s given out, but also we would have actually not given 2 10-7s that were given, so it kind of balances out.
Yeah, balance.
We're still looking at a hyper rare
Yeah.
score.
Yeah.
Super, super rare. And I mean, at this point, shoot, with the state of the 10-8 being what it is, are we ever going to see a 10-7 again? I mean, I don't know. It would take some changes.
Got to hammer down 10-8 first.
I would say, and I should note that we're talking specifically about in North America, where there are pressures from commissions and things like that. It works a little differently when they go overseas. So maybe it would work differently when the UFC acts as its own commission, or if it goes somewhere else.
Where does this pressure come from? It's got to be made up. It's just got to be like, where are people saying that shouldn't be a 10-7? And
no, I'm not saying a 10-7. I mean the 8.
Oh, where does that even
I'm talking about the 8, like the whole thing that we've been talking about ever since that round.
I know,
the
but
everything. With Dana. It also goes back to Dana.
I know it all comes back to Dana. But I mean, is Izzy any less marketable because he got 10-8'd? No.
No, I don't think that was what it was. I think he just got mad that, again, the sport changed and he didn't notice, and then he
didn't change with it.
Yeah, it's that too.
Like,
he wants the beatdowns, and that's not what it was. They changed it, and they changed it on purpose, and I think a lot of people were happy with it, and then now it's not. So that's what we have. But because, again, as a result, if we're seeing less 10-7s or 10-8s, we're going to see less 10-7s.
It's got to be in line with
what's it
like
gonna
the
be?
3-pointer. When the 3-pointer came about, people had to be against it.
And I should point out too. I mean, I want to stick. I'm going to avoid the basketball metaphor, fortunately for this one. But the last round we just talked about, Easy DES, that was since the crackdown, right?
Yeah.
Now, granted, all these judges are European judges. David Leatherby is from the UK, Anders Olsen is Swedish, and Clemens Werner is German. So they're not working under the same mandates that we've seen from Nevada or any other state, right? But having said that, I mean, if this isn't a 7, I mean, what are we looking for? I don't know. I mean, and these are judges that I would think are more likely to end up with it because, again, they're judges that haven't had to work under the adjustments that have been made in North America. So when are we going to see a 7, Jan? I just don't know. I don't think we're going to see one. Not that I'm not rooting for someone to be beaten so badly that there's a 7. I should also point that out. Like, I'm not, my bloodlust isn't to the point where I'm like, I want someone to actually get beat up with it to where you got to put a 7, but I just want the 7 to be available to judges. The tool is there, but the tool is made. It's like if you had imagine you had like your workbench, right? But you put one of your tools like on the roof. Like, what's the point? What's the point of it up there? It doesn't help you. You have to go work to go get it. It's not going to happen. You're just going to say, "Oh, I'm not going to use it." So
just make it attainable.
It seems unattainable at this point. It kind of did already. It almost felt vestigial in the sense where it's like we just have it because boxing has it, but we don't need it. We don't use it. It does, for all intents and purposes. I feel like there's also a reluctance to pull the 7 because, especially in a 3-round fight, because once you pull that 7, it's game over. Especially if you pull it in the first round. Once you pull that 7 in the first round, the other fighter needs to win the fight on a finish or get an 8 and a 9 or somehow another 7,
But
which
you know
is not
what?
happening.
That shouldn't come down to the judge.
I also agree.
That's on the fighter. You got 10-7. I didn't do that to you. You did it to yourself.
Yeah, I feel
So-
like the fighter, if a fighter did enough to the point where they made the damage uncomfortable and the other fighter was able to survive it, sorry, that's the fighter who did that should be rewarded.
I feel
but I understand that it's a product of another one of the negative products of having fewer rounds.
Yeah, but we're not going to dive into that.
I mean obviously we're not, but no, the idea that 7s should be they're just not available, and I would love to see some more changes. I think what I would like to see is something that, again, you can't use the word uncomfortable, right? It's kind of the idea behind them writing impact instead of damage, right? When we talk about damage every single time, the criteria is talking
Criteria
about
says
impact.
impact.
We know what we mean. It's a euphemism. It's the same thing. We need to find a word that can kind of be that substitute for uncomfortable level of damage, right? If a fight, to me, you could almost not need all 3Ds
Honestly,
for a 10-7. If the damage gets so bad where you're worried about the other human in there because the fight, he's still in there or she's still in there taking damage, but the fight is still going, or the fight has not been stopped, as Mertz Aliyev, right? I think the damage there is just so overwhelming. I still say that was the highest. I understand you say one or the other, right? We're basically talking about the top
Yeah.
two in any order, right? That damage there is just so massive. I mean, this fighter is basically done for all intents and purposes. That should be a 7. You shouldn't need anything else. So I applaud Ben Cartlidge for giving the 7 here. I think that's great. I would like to see that, and I would like to see that absolutely codified specifically in some way that makes it more clear for people who don't go into training courses. They don't do this stuff. They don't immerse themselves in judging in the way that nerds like you and me do, right? It should just be there, so that if anybody pulls up the document, they can figure out, oh, okay, this is an extreme level of damage. Maybe it's just what it is. It's just an extreme level of damage. You put the 7. That's it. But we also need, like we talked about with the grappling, I think there ought to be an avenue, maybe more explicit avenue for getting to a 7 because of grappling. Is it because, maybe there was some damage suffered from a submission, like in the sense of, Tony Ferguson's arm.
Yeah.
Maybe it would take that. But can we codify that? Let's put that in there.
But that's the thing that's inherent in fighting. Punches are going to do more damage
Sure.
than submissions that fail.
No, and I
So-
get that, but that's why we should say, hey, maybe it is Tony Ferguson's arm breaking. You can say, oh, well, that was an extreme level of damage. He actually hurt his arm in a meaningful way. I don't know.
The thing is, though, most 99% of the time, that just becomes a tech sub.
That's okay.
So the fight ends.
It can look, if they want to keep the 7s as an extreme score, then 99% of the time, that being the case, that's actually okay.
Right? It's fine if 10-7 is going to be the extreme score.
Mm-hmm.
But 10-8 needs to actually hit that 5% benchmark and also not be an extreme score.
Yeah, you're right.
So-
And the 5% you refer to is, of course, in that little explainer sheet that was released by ABC.
Yeah.
At the conference. They're shooting for the 10-8s to be 5% of rounds. But yeah, I mean, we're really only seeing, I think we're seeing roughly 6%. I forget the number off the top of my head. I don't remember my own data. But it was somewhere in the 6 to 7% of times we're getting anyone give a 7, or excuse me, an 8. And it's more like 2 to 3% that we're actually getting the majority score be the 8. So it's not hitting that. We need roughly double that.
I think it's going to, you have to lock down what an 8 is.
Mm-hmm.
Define that.
You're not wrong.
Strongly, and then you can
And stick to it.
And work to the
Yeah.
Stop just
the language is there to allow for it, but it's also loose enough to have allowed this situation where the commissions can more or less pull back the mandates and say, hey, I know there's freedom there, but we don't want to see that.
And like I was saying before, I think duration's kind of silly. I think because when I was reading this or when I was doing this,
so are you suggesting we shouldn't have duration?
So what I'm saying is a lot of the reasons we didn't get to 10-7 is because of duration. And
Yeah, I
it's
think that's fair.
Is duration all that important? I mean, if
yes and no,
you can hurt it like we saw. You can hurt a guy very, very quickly.
Yeah, it can
in a small portion.
Yeah, it
of
can
a
go
round.
downhill fast.
Like, should duration weigh that much?
But that's why I feel like if
So-
you just codify the fact that damage would weigh more to get you there, then
Yeah.
that more or less solves the issue that you're
Like,
talking
I
about.
could say-
think.
Why don't you just throw duration as like a sub portion, like a mini D?
like a lowercase d.
Yeah, lowercase d.
I like it in theory. I don't know. We'd have to play around with it, of course. Yeah. More or less, I really just kind of want to see more avenues to get us there and more
Mhm.
clearly established. It shouldn't have to be 8 lines like you're talking about. I think the criteria doesn't have to be 3.5 pages. I think it could actually be way longer, to be perfectly honest. It doesn't have to go into every scenario. Like, I understand there's a reason why it's left open to a degree.
I hope you find that that time to do that rewriting it how you would
my own way.
write on your way. If you
We
hope you find the
talked
time
about
for
that on the show. I don't even
Yeah,
remember
you
that.
did.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I hope you find the time to do that this year.
Yeah, we'll see.
So-
Hopefully. Yeah. When will I ever
That would
find
be
the time to do
interesting.
anything? Oh yeah, I watched 41 rounds for this, so I guess I found some time. But that was when technically the UFC off season, which now we're gonna get into, and there'll be a little bit of fits and starts, but then at some point it's like 3 months straight of fights.
Yeah, we'll have a week
Christ.
off after these two straight weeks, a week off, and then we're in it.
Yay!
Yay, yeah, let's go.
I don't know. I'm exhausted by by even the off season at this point.
Not looking to that February 4th card, but let's go.
Yeah, no, I understand. Any other changes you think you'd make
Any
to the sevens? Seven
To
specifically. I understand what you're saying about the 8 being established so
specifically?
they get to 7, but yeah.
7 specifically,
Like, how
as
do we-
it's written.
How do we make some of these rounds that we're only saying is an 8, but we'd like to see as a 7? How do we make those get there? That's what we have to establish.
Yeah, forget that duration, pretty much. 'Cause
You-
those were a lot of a lot of the knocks
Mhm.
where I was at.
So you
Like, you know what? But then it's because Anders and
See,
Roundtree specifically.
yeah, okay. I don't want to steal.
That's
your thunder. I have
such
something to say
that's
after.
such a weird round. High damage, but is it that damaging? High dominance, without a doubt.
Sure,
Complete outclassing.
but he's not following up.
He's not following up at all.
But I feel like that for that reason, almost he shouldn't get a 7.
Right, yeah.
right?
I'm
Yeah.
agreeing on an 8. Duration has no bearing on the 8 there.
Yeah.
So,
You could make the case, and I think it's sort of been explained to us too by other officials that, like, if you have dominance, you probably have duration too, right?
not in this sense,
No,
though.
in the sense, but like you could make it to say, okay, to be as dominant as you need to be to get the D, there should at least be some form of duration in there. It doesn't have to be 5 minutes of it, but it should be effort to sustain or not effort, but like actual resulting in sustained offense, as opposed to like we're saying here in the Roundtree round, start and then kind of just stop and wait.
Crack 'em one.
That would almost make it harder for that to be considered overwhelming dominance, because you'd have to factor in how long is he dominant.
Yeah.
I think if we did something like that,
I would
that
think
be
I would
interesting.
rather them write that to pertain to grappling specifically.
Okay.
And not so much striking, because if you knock someone down 4 times in a round, you're outclassing them, you're dominant.
Sure. I really do want to find a way to get Mitchell, especially in that first round.
I think
10-7.
that's the one thing I would change, is define what overwhelming damage in a grappling sense is.
Yeah. It would
That
be
doesn't
nice if
end
this
a
was
fight.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing too. Maybe if the 10-7s and maybe the 8-2 could really just kind of better illustrate what high damage in both grappling and striking phases are,
Or
and in both the 8 and the 7. The 7 it's much less clear.
Or Scott, I would be fine if they came out and wrote, it is much easier to attain a 10-7 through striking than it is grappling. Grappling, it's not going to happen.
I don't think they'd get away with that though.
But I'm saying there has to be some, because there is a bias towards striking.
Sure.
There
is.
It just does more damage, just the way things are.
But that's why I say they should build in something that
So,
allows for it. Yeah,
you gotta find what that is though.
Yeah.
What is it?
I think if
I
you're
don't know.
starting to put in there, yeah, like let's say you get these multiple submission attempts that last for significant amounts of time. You're seeing someone who appears to be on the verge of submitting, and they're stuck in there for a while, or
Mhm.
maybe it's just like it's really tight. You're seeing them absolutely go nuts in there, kind of like the brief moment in round 3 of Volkanovski and Ortega, right, where Ortega's like very, very not very, very or Ortega has Volkanovski in that nasty guillotine, right?
Sick.
That one in particular. I feel like that's like 10-7 level a submission attempt.
When they're bucking, and it's like technique out the window, just pure
Just going crazy.
will and
Yeah,
strength. Let me get
Something
out
like
of
that
this.
ought to at least be available to them. Yeah.
Okay.
That's
gotcha.
that's still short of it for
That's-
Rosa's case, but Rosa is obviously he's defending like it's the absolute perfect way to defend. It's like he's nailed it to a T.
He
But
really
other than that,
did.
he's still stuck in that very badly.
I remember this, and it brought back the memories of defensively sound he was while stuck in these positions.
Yeah.
I did want to mention, I said, this is why they stressed in these classes to us how important it was to understand submissions.
Absolutely. And that's why we
That was
drilled
a huge portion.
And I, of course, missed that entire portion because I was sitting there doing other work, which sucked. I really wanted to be a part of that.
So you can know, because then they'll be like, oh, the fighter will be like, no, I wasn't almost put to sleep. And then like, oh, you're struggling there for a little bit. You're caught in a really deep head and arm.
Granted, I at least have some grappling experience. Not everybody does, but I did. So there was something there. But it would have been nice to be able to participate better like you guys did at the ABC. But nonetheless, I demonstrated enough to pass my class, so that was good. I think that's probably all the changes I think we're going to get to this. But I don't want to drag this out and have it be an unfortunate list.
No, next time we do this, we'll obviously
in 10 years, yeah.
We'll hit notes throughout every show. I'm sure.
It's true.
But when we get a break and Scott has written the Scott's version of the criteria, I'm sure we'll have that own show for that.
We'll see. Let's wrap this 10-7 up and let's go over to just really quick looking ahead to the return of the UFC schedule. Like I said, off season's over.
Yep.
We're back at it. UFC Vegas 67. Yay, 67.
Let's go.
Just 2 more and then we get 69. Anyway, Kelvin Gastelum against Nasruddin Imavov. Middleweight headliner here. Kind of just some fights. Kind of how it feels.
Just a couple fights.
Just some fights. Yeah. That's this card. As the CME boys co-main event would say. I'm interested in where this kind of can leave Imavov. Is he going to be able to get past Gatekeeper Gastelum here or not? I don't know. It's not really intrigue. I'm not really interested here. It's just this feels like a fight that would be maybe one of the main fights on the ESPN prelims.
Well, the interest. Well, that's where the interest comes in this one. It's like, can Imavov get past Gastelum?
But is it enough to get you to tune in all night for it?
But it's
that's what I'm saying.
It's a tough test, though.
We're gonna watch it, of course. But, I don't know. It's just I don't know.
There's other fights.
It's just like a blah main event. That's how I feel anyway.
Okay.
It being in Nevada, though, we should expect high level judging as we
Yes, we should.
Any other fights you want to see here?
Yeah. Umar Nurmagomedov versus.
Did I say that name? I've never heard that name.
Yeah, that's the way you say it.
Oh.
Versus, I don't know if I'm saying this one correctly, Ronnie Barcelos.
Yeah. We were debating this before. Is it Howney Barcelos or is it Ronnie Barcelos? I don't remember.
I think it's Ronnie.
Well, we'll find out. Especially if Anik's on here, we'll definitely get the right one.
Will Anik be on? That's a good thing.
I don't know. Yeah, maybe he's going to wait a week to turn back. I don't know. I want to see actually though. I'm
going to say he's not on because they're going to Brazil next week.
That's true.
I'm going to say no.
That's true. Maybe he won't want to travel. I don't know. But he hasn't done anything in a while. I mean, not he hasn't done anything. He's been on his podcast, but he's had a lighter schedule of travel. Maybe he'll be like, yeah, I go to Vegas and then I go to Brazil. Who knows? Neither here nor there. I do also want to see, and I think you do too, Dan Ige against Damon Jackson at 145. I like that fight. That's a good fight. This is also like a just some fights, but I think it'd be really fun. These are both fun.
Did Damon Jackson stick to his social media presence? I know he was like, I hate social media, but then he's like, I better get into it though. That's how people are getting these fights.
I don't remember.
I don't know if he stuck around with it.
I don't remember, to be honest.
So
social media sucks.
Yeah, it does.
It just does. Yeah. That wraps us up. This was a long show for us. This obviously we had a lot of rounds and we had a lot of interesting discussion. Hopefully everybody enjoyed it. We're probably like I said, we're not really going to be doing another one of these 10-7 shows for a long time. I think maybe what we can do is as we see potential 10-7s, maybe we just kind of in that episode we devote just a little bit of time. It's not going to happen very often.
Yeah, well, we covered them. There's not going to have that many to cover again.
Maybe what we should do every single time we get a unanimous 10-8 because they're now so rare. I think it's there were 10 last year in the UFC. So every time we get one, we should add that as its own section because that's not a contested round. It's unanimous.
I'm with you. I like.
We should just look at it and be like, can we talk about this as a 7? Let's do that.
Let's
add that. Let's add that.
We'll add that.
You know what we should call this section? Is this a 7?
Is this a 7?
I like it. It feels very Sesame Street.
Okay. I like it.
Let's do it.
All right, that wraps up all the 10-7 talk. Fights are back this weekend. We'll be back again to break them all down.
Contested rounds coming at you, and hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next week.
Have a great night.